So I think for this past year, we've all had that one important question in our minds. I think every single MMA fan ever at this point has wondered this one thing. When is Conor McGregor returning to the octagon? When will this man, the biggest name in MMA, return to the octagon and fight in the UFC? And it seems like for over a year now, we haven't had an answer to our question. At some points, we thought it would be in December of last year. We thought it would be at UFC 300. And now we're thinking probably at UFC 303 or sometime during the summer, we might see Conor McGregor return to the octagon. But in his most recent interview that he had with Ariel Helwani, it turns out we might not even see Conor come back to the octagon. I don't know when, and maybe even ever. And don't fall for the McGregor propaganda. He's not coming back in June or in the summer. I think we are farther away from seeing him return for, I think, another probably 6 months, maybe in the fall, maybe of early next year, we might see Conor return. But as of right now, with how he's talking on Ariel Helwani's show, I don't think we're going to see a Conor return for another 6-7 months at best. I don't think he's telling the full truth. I think him and the UFC are actually farther away from making a deal than what he's thinking that they are. Either his management are being absolute yes men, they're just trying to string him along to make sure he stays motivated, or this is a ploy, this is a smart brain move from McGregor, and he's trying to put some pressure on the UFC to pay him his money and make him some moolah. I know he's already rich, but guess what? He still wants more money. He calls himself the most underpaid fighter in the UFC. So maybe he's just saying this to put some more pressure on the UFC to pay him more money than he would normally get if he just fought Michael Chandler without putting any pressure on them. So the big question right now is, what did Conor actually say in his interview? And I'm going to play it for you today and give you a nice reaction to it, because guess what? There's no content because this week is Amanda Ribas versus Rose Namajunas. So we have to deal with Conor McGregor interviews for the meantime. So let's not waste any more time and dive right into the interview between Ariel Helwani and Conor McGregor on the MMA Hour.
As far as UFC 300 is concerned, are you fighting June 29th, Conor? This is the big question that everyone wants to know.
So I'm very happy where I am now. The call has been made, and we're a go. So this
what does
summer,
that mean? What does that mean? The call has been made.
This means this summer the Mac is back. So I'm happy with my time I've got in the lead up to it. I'm happy with where I'm at, and everything just works out in God's name. And I'm ecstatic, my man.
So Conor says the call has been made, and then Ariel promptly asks him, what does that even mean? And all he does is pretty much ramble about hopefully he gets a fight. So he didn't really answer the question. All he really told us was that his management has made calls to the UFC, and pretty much that's about it. And I hate to be that guy, but that means absolutely nothing. If your management is just calling about a fight, that doesn't mean you're for sure returning in the summertime. I think what's actually happening here is that Conor's team is calling the UFC and telling them, hey, pay us this much money and then we can fight on that card. I think right now Conor is willing to sit out and work on his acting career if the UFC doesn't pay him any money. And let me clarify real quick. What I mean by pay him any money, of course, he's Conor McGregor. He's going to get an absolute bag. But I think Conor right now knows that he can make a ton of money, a major amount of money after Ngannou fought with Anthony Joshua, after Ngannou fought Tyson Fury. Him fighting Poirier and only getting paid $5 million, I think that was the rumored amount, is not enough money when he compares himself to Ngannou, who's making like $20 million versus Anthony Joshua. Like, Conor knows that right now, out of any active combat sports person, he is the most popular, and so he deserves to be paid as the most popular guy in combat sports by the corporation or promotion that he's fighting for, which is obviously going to be the UFC. So effectively what he's doing is putting the pressure on the UFC to pay him money, because the UFC, they want him back. Having Conor back is the best thing for the UFC, and they would rather have him back sooner than later. But it's taking so long, not because of the UFC, but because of Conor McGregor and his demands. We know if Conor wanted to fight, he could have fought all the way back in December of last year. He could have fought a UFC 300. He could have fought, next week if he wanted to on a pay-per-view or 301. He can fight anytime that he wants to fight, but he's more focused on his acting career. He's more focused on doing other things outside of the octagon, and he doesn't need to return because he wants to make more money, but he's more focused on other things like his acting career, and he doesn't really need the UFC. The UFC kind of needs him, so he knows this. We all know Conor right now, he can never fight again, and he'll be absolutely fine financially. His legacy is already whatever it is. Conor is fine without combat sports. Combat sports kind of need Conor McGregor right now. We're in a very bad dead period where there's no huge names. We haven't hit 1 million pay-per-views in I don't know how long since Conor last fought, I believe. So the sport desperately needs Conor back in it. And at this point, if he wants 20 million just to fight Michael Chandler, the UFC is probably going to have to cough that up, or else he probably won't fight again.
But can I just ask you this, Conor, because I've seen you do a lot of interviews with a lot of sort of Hollywood media, and you drop little nuggets that I think go over their head because maybe they don't follow fighting as closely as we do.
Okay.
And I could sense your frustration when you've been talking to a lot of people saying, I'm waiting for the call. Here's my take on it, Conor, and I'd love to get
Hello, Mr. White. Hello, Mr. White.
But Conor,
And the
Anthony Joshua doesn't wait for the call from Eddie Hearn. Tyson Fury doesn't wait for the call from Frank Warren. Conor McGregor, as you put it, the most underpaid fighter in the history of fighting, shouldn't wait for the call from anyone. The date should be built around you. You know that.
Yeah. No, it's fair enough. If 2 fights left in the contract and we got to do something else, or do we? I don't know. I mean, surely nobody brings the figures I bring.
Do you see how unsure he sounds? He says there's 2 more fights on his deal, or he's doing something else. Now, obviously, it wasn't that aggressive or assertive, but that's pretty much what's going through his mind. If he can't get paid like how some of these big boxers are getting paid, then he'll just do something else, which he has plenty of avenues to do in acting, for one. Conor doesn't have to fight in the UFC to make any money. We know this. I don't need to sit here and pretty much give you a lecture on how rich this guy is, but guess what? He is Conor McGregor. He owns his own whiskey company. I think he is the main antagonist of the new movie Roadhouse, which I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't read up too much about that movie, but I know that he is playing a significant role in Roadhouse, which is a big acting gig with Jake Gyllenhaal, who's a big name actor in Hollywood. Like, he can make some real dough, not in the UFC. And again, he's Conor McGregor. You've seen in the interview, he's a little bit uncertain. There's 2 more fights left on his deal. He doesn't have to continue fighting if he doesn't feel like he's getting paid enough.
So I'm happy.
Do they want you to sign a new deal before this upcoming
There's been
fight?
no talks about no deals. There's been not an iota of a talk. Usually Lorenzo would have had something tasty on my plate well ago. Lorenzo would have probably fucking re-signed me 2 fights ago, maybe even. So it's just, I don't know. No, there's no talks. Maybe they just don't know as well. It's just
I think they know.
How do you know? No, what what to do?
No, I think they know. I think they know that you're up.
I know they know I'm up, but I mean, what way do you approach it? Like, how do we do? Because what's going to settle me? I'm a billion. I'm Mr. B, Ariel. Yeah, I just ride the wave, man, and then I don't know after that.
Now, this is where I get a bit confused because earlier in this interview, Conor pretty much stated that his management team has made the call and that he's fighting in June, and he was pretty confident about that, smiling. He was pretty hopeful. But when it comes about him resigning in the UFC, there's nothing. There's crickets. So now I'm thinking, if he's not hearing anything about the UFC, if there's no proactive relationship between them two, is he really getting calls about fighting for sure in June? Because I'm pretty sure if the UFC was really proactive with Conor, they would call him and tell him, hey, let's get you fighting in June. If you beat Chandler, we'll book you versus somebody else. Let's get you re-signed as soon as possible. We want you to be successful in the UFC because you are our main breadwinner. And so that got me thinking, if the UFC has no future plan for Conor, are they really even talking about a plan now? Because you have to plan things now for the future. If he does want to beat Chandler, what do you do afterwards? You just don't do anything, or you just go back to square one and just ghost him? So it seems like to me that maybe these two aren't talking between Conor and the UFC. Maybe they're not really talking as Conor makes it seem.
Is there a chance you fight the 2 fights and then test the market, or do you not have any interest in doing that? Would you like to lock something up before that?
We'll have to talk. That's what I'm saying. I don't know, and I don't know whether they know what to come at me with. What can you come at me with? I don't. Hollywood now is lined up. I actually can play loads of roles. Think of the amount of movies I could do. Amount of unusual crap. You know the way, like, there's Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then there's like Sylvester Stallone, and then all these guys, and they've all these great movies made around them. Thinking about the thinking about the thinking about the movies that you could make around me.
So yeah, this is what I pretty much mean about Conor being able to pursue his acting career. He's pretty confident that he has some other things lined up for himself, and the UFC, they don't know. They don't know what's going on with Conor and his acting career. So this is probably the miscommunication that's going on. This is why I'm kind of leaning towards they're not really talking about him fighting anytime soon, because the UFC would know about his acting career. If they were trying to work around Conor and try to get him fighting with his acting career also in there as well, if they were trying to balance his schedule to get him fighting as soon as possible, they would have a plan for his acting career, for anything that he's doing when he's not fighting. They simply just would have plans for Conor outside of combat sports if they were communicating effectively. And I don't think that they are. The UFC would know about his acting career. They would know that, okay, Conor's doing a movie during this time period. Okay, let's get you signed for this fight. Even Conor earlier in the interview said that he could work around his acting, whatever, his acting business to make sure that he fights sometime. If Conor is willing to work around his acting schedule, there's pretty much no excuse for him not to be fighting already or having a fight announced already. If there was some sort of effective communication between the UFC and Conor McGregor, he would be fighting pretty much now, the next pay-per-view card, or it should already be announced by now. But there is no communication because Conor doesn't really care. He knows that he wants to make a buttload of money. And if the UFC is not willing to pay him that much money, then guess what? He can just focus on his acting career, make movies about his career in the UFC, do things with him. He is fully invested in the lifestyle of acting. When he talks about Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, he is idolizing himself in the acting space. Whereas in the UFC space, he loves it. He likes combat sports. He wants to fight, I think, still, but it's not the main thing on his mind right now. Acting is, movies is, his life after fighting is on his mind right now, not current fighting. And you know what? I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he signs to fight Michael Chandler for UFC 303 or anytime during, International Fight Week. I hope he does prove me wrong genuinely, because I want to see Conor back in the octagon. Like I mentioned before, he is the best thing for combat sports right now, and we need him in the space. And without him, it gets kind of boring. It's a little bit stale. Conor is great for content, but right now, I think that he is trying to put some pressure on the UFC to get a deal done and get things made, whereas I don't think the UFC really knows what's going on with Conor. They're trying to figure some things out, but I think they're in the dark just as much as Conor is with his whole re-signing thing. So I don't know, guys. This is my video for today. Let me know your opinion in the comment section down below. I'm out of here, guys. Like, subscribe, hit that bell icon for notifications. I'll see y'all later. Peace.